say it anyway. These stories are scary. Some of them have to do with supernatural phenomena, but other ones, most of them actually, are just about creepy people out in the world. So if that's not your cup of tea, then I would say just leave this video where it is and go find one that is better suited to you. And yeah, I mean, I don't like scary movies, for example, so I avoid them. Okay, so without further ado, the first one is called There's Something on the Stairs. So when I was a kid, I would race up to the top of the stairs as fast as I could, like it was some sort of silly game. I must have been 5 or 6 at the time. I'm not sure, but I know I was very little. Somewhere along the way, a voice at the top of the stairs started to whisper to me. It would make bets with me like, I bet you a penny you can't make it to the top of the stairs. I bet you a penny you can't make it to the top of the stairs. I don't really think there was a certain amount of time or anything. As I said, I was really little, so I probably didn't have any counting abilities anyway. I just recall sitting at the top of the stairs, having conversations with this voice about the betting. Eventually the voice, which was like the whisper of a man's voice, not my own voice in my head, eventually that voice started to bet me my life. Instead of pennies, it'd say, I bet you your life you can't make it to the top of the stairs. I bet you your life you can't make it to the top of the stairs. As I got older, it stopped. I never really thought about it at all. I never mentioned it to anyone until one night I was sleeping over at my brother's. I was probably 18, he was like 22. We were talking about spooky stories. Out of nowhere, I brought up the voice at the top of the stairs, and my brother got all quiet and weird. And before I even mentioned the betting, he said, "Did it make bets with you?" We both looked at each other horrified. It was certainly very freaky. A lot of bad stuff went down in my family at that period of time in my life. And my mother, who was a heavily religious lady, said there was a lot of evil in our lives at that time. I don't think our place was haunted, by the way. It was built in the 70s, and as I got older, I never experienced anything like that again. The next one is called First Floor Problems. When I was in my early 20s, around 2003, I lived in a suburb of Atlanta that was generally considered safe. Since I was 18, I had always lived on my own in various apartments. This was my first ground floor apartment, and I remember talking to my mom about it, and she warned me about the added dangers of living on the ground floor, but I shrugged it off because the excitement of not having to lift like 40 pounds of groceries up 3 flights of stairs was enough to offset any potential danger. Plus, I was 22, and I was like, what does my mom know anyway? I had a really good day job, but I loved to party, so I thought I'd get a second job at night at the local pub as barback. I got to hang out at my favorite spot, got free drinks, got to see my friends, no brainer. After my second night on the job, I went home around 1:30, flopped on the bed, and went right to sleep. At some point in the night, I woke up because my cat was meowing, and I felt like someone was in the room. I turned my head to the left, and there was a man kneeling beside me at the bed. I began flailing. By this time, my cat was like screaming, and the man turned around and ran out of my room. I jumped out of my bed to run to the phone after the guy to a friend's place. I don't really know where, but I started to run. And when I did, was standing there naked. After getting over the initial shock, I went into my living room and saw the patio door open, where he must have ran out. Maybe that's also where he got in. My cat was walking in circles, panting and meowing. She was in just as much shock as I was. I went back to my room still naked and saw my kitchen shears on the floor. I looked at my clothing. This person was next to my bed, cutting my clothing off of me as I slept. I called the police, and they come out to investigate and take a report. The CSI folks were there dusting for prints. They brought in a K9. It was so surreal. I went to the jail and looked at lineups, sat in the back of police cars to have follow-up interviews, and I looked at pictures, but I couldn't identify the person. I'll never forget the dark polo shirt and backwards cap he wore, but the face is a blur. Shortly after, there was a murder in my building. I got the F out and moved to a 4th floor apartment on the other side of town. And then this one is called A Different Kind of Grindr. It's a little spooky. I've only told this story to my closest friends. I haven't even confided in my sister because I would be ashamed. So buckle up because this tale needs to be told in length. I went to college in Chicago, which has a large gay community. Now, gay men are true champions of leveraging technology to their sexual prowess. Grindr was on the map as a go-to hookup app years before the straights got into a tizzy about Tinder. I normally use Grindr to expedite getting my rocks off, but I was having an off week and decided to use a platform that's more to the point. Craigslist. I posted a listing looking for a hookup with a good-looking, slightly older man, and with a few hours, I settled on a fit 30-something-year-old. This was a Friday night, so he agreed to pick me up at my apartment building. Then he would take me back to his place, and we'd fool around. That was the plan. He picks me up at my nearest intersection. He's just as attractive as his picture, yeah, but something is a little off personality-wise. I can only describe it as he was a little off, but he wasn't off in a slow way. In fact, it was the total opposite. He was incredibly nice. His voice was kind and light, but there was something too practiced about it. In retrospect, the more I think about it, the more it feels rehearsed, calculated, like a razor blade hiding in a popsicle. He asked me a little bit about myself, but he didn't respond when I would ask him the same questions. He'd just smile and laugh it off. What I did manage to get out of him was that he worked in real estate. Remember this. He had told me earlier through email that he lived on X and Y Street. I wrote this off as a blip originally because these two streets ran parallel, and he essentially told me that he lived in the middle of the road. We were in his car for about 8 minutes when he had already passed these two streets by a few blocks. I lived in a popular, walkable area, so at this moment I told myself, you can get out of the car now and you can run home. You're still close enough. But I ignored my gut. I told myself that I was overanalyzing it. We get to his place after a 35-minute car ride. We're out of the city and in a neighborhood that I don't recognize. But his house is clean. But it's too clean. Everything was so polished, nothing out of place. There was like a Dexter level of cleanliness about it. We go into the kitchen, which was in the back of the house, and after a minute or two of more awkward conversation, I make a move. I wrap my hands around him and kiss him. Except he doesn't, receive the kiss. My lips make contact with his, but his lips remain flat and at rest. There's a moment of pause, and he smiles against my kiss. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was like a knowing smirk. He tells me this is his first time, and he's very, very nervous. He excuses himself and runs to the basement. The stairs down to the basement are right next to the kitchen. They're They're not a straight staircase because they turn at a right angle halfway down, which prevents me from seeing what's downstairs. He's down there for like a good 5-10 minutes. I hear stuff rustling around, metal things clanking together, so I yell down to get him back up. The sound stops, no reply, and then it starts again. I run to the bathroom and lock the door. I think about jumping out the window because it's a ranch. I text a friend. He tells me to get out, but I don't want to offend my host. There's a knock on the bathroom door, and he says to meet him in the bedroom. The kitchen is next to the bathroom, so I consider pocketing a knife. He comes back up, and we finally start fooling around. He won't kiss, and he keeps telling me that this is his first time. So we fool around, and then he walks back down to the basement. I put on my underwear and walk to the edge of the stairs. I hear whimpers and whispers. There's no one downstairs except for him, I'm sure. The clinking metal sounds continue. They're not loud. They sound like a scalpel being placed on a metal surgery tray or tools bouncing in a toolbox. He's downstairs for like 5, 10, 15 minutes now. I'm fully dressed. I'm giving my friend a play through text, and he tells me to drop him a pin, but I don't know how to do it, so he walks me through the process. When I finally do send him my location, he calls me. You have to get out of that house now. Why? Do you know where you are? You're out by O'Hare, he says. My fight or flight completely kicks in, now understanding that I'm stranded in an area that has no access to public transportation and I don't have a car. So I yell downstairs to see if he's alright. All sounds stop. No reply. For a moment, I think about grabbing his keys from his jacket and driving his car a few blocks from my place, then leaving it wherever. But at this point I yell down, I'll be waiting outside. I hear what sounds like chains dropping and footsteps coming up the stairs. I run to the door, fumbling with the lock until I rip it open and get outside. He was naked the last time I saw him, so I figure getting dressed will at least slow him down. I freeze for a moment, and then I take off running. I made it 2 blocks away before I broke down crying and called an Uber. This was February in Chicago. It was maybe 22 degrees outside and snowy. At this point, the mystery man tries calling me, and I hang up. He texts, "Ha, where'd you go?" I say that I got a ride and that I'm okay. I block his number. I hid between 2 cars at a used car lot while waiting 30 minutes for an Uber to pick me up. I saw the mystery man's car driving around looking for me. 2 Ubers had already canceled, and I had to call the 3rd Uber and make him promise that he wouldn't cancel on me because I was in danger. I blocked out this experience mostly. There are some nights when I begin to go over all the details in my head. It destroys me and turns my blood cold, and it's the little red flags that deeply unnerve me. 1. I'm convinced that we were in a model home, or at least a home that he was selling. 2. He was gay and comfortable with himself, but I believe he was referring to something more sinister when he was saying that it was his first time. 3. The smartest thing I did, among many foolish ones, was not going into the basement. I don't think I would have come back upstairs. 4. There's a moment in the end of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo where a man goes with the killer into his house, knowing by now that he is the serial killer, and the killer says something like, "You knew, but you still came inside. We're too afraid of being rude to go with our animal instinct and get away from danger." I experienced this firsthand. 5. I always think back to the story that was submitted here last year about a man who was almost killed by John Wayne Gacy at a hotel as a teenager. He says that one day he saw Gacy's face on the TV after being caught, and he had a total breakdown, knowing what almost became of him. Something deep inside me tells me that I may have a moment like that myself one day. Guys, please be safe. husband Adam and I got engaged. Our relationship had been a bit of a whirlwind. In the week following our engagement, we were on a mini break with his extended family who had come from the States to the UK to stay in a big Airbnb type property, a period farmhouse in the Yorkshire Dales. The property was in the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest town, and had a great big dormitory type bedroom. When we arrived, my father-in-law joked that he had already hidden the guest book from Grandma because the last few reviews had mentioned strange things going on and the shadow of a woman in the corner of the master bedroom. We were assigned a huge room to ourselves, which must have had about 8 single beds in it. As I mentioned, we were newly engaged, and there was no way we were sleeping in separate beds, so we pushed 2 single beds together, creating like a mega bed at the top of the room. Despite our earlier enthusiasm for the new love nest, my husband went to bed early that night. He had been complaining of feeling unwell and was tired from the drive. He doesn't sleep well and suffers from extreme night terrors, and I frequently wake up in the night to find him flailing and panicking about a nightmare he's having or something he's convinced he's seen in the room. These episodes can be really terrifying for me because I'm abruptly awoken from a deep sleep to try to calm down this very strong man who won't be reasoned with until he's awake himself. When I got into bed later, I just knew it was going to be one of those nights. I had a sinking feeling that with him being unwell and in a strange new place, he'd have sleep disturbances. I sometimes trigger these terrors by getting into bed when he's already asleep, but the bed we had created was so large that I didn't even touch him. In fact, I couldn't even feel him near me. Around 2 a.m., I was woken up. As I mentioned, we were in the middle of nowhere, but we'd left a curtain open at the other end of the room, and the moonlight was flooding into the bedroom. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that Adam was sitting at the bottom of the bed on the side furthest from me. At the time, he had very long brown hair, just like me, and people would joke that we looked the same from behind. He was sitting with his head in his hands, leaning forward, his hair covering his face. He was wearing a white t-shirt, which isn't normally what he sleeps in, but I hadn't been there when he got ready for bed. I wasn't sure if he had been sleepwalking or if he was genuinely awake and was having trouble sleeping, so I waited for a while to see if he would start talking in his sleep. After watching him for a couple of minutes, I decided he had to be awake because he hadn't moved from the position he was in, and he was breathing in a slow and labored way, I assumed because he wasn't feeling well. What happened next terrified me so much that I froze in bed. I was about to ask him, "Are you okay?" when something else in the bed moved next to me. I looked at Adam at the bottom of the bed to see if he'd moved the covers or something, but he was just sitting there, still and silent. Adam's voice then spoke, but his voice didn't come from the end of the bed, it came from right beside me. "Emma, why are you sitting at the end of the bed?" Instinctively, I reached out to grab who was ever in the bed next to me, and I immediately found Adam's arm. "I'm here," I shouted. He leaned over and turned the bedside light on, and sure enough, we were both still in bed. I looked at the end of the bed, and the figure that I thought was Adam had disappeared. He had been watching the same figure, and he was convinced it was me, with my long hair across my face, wearing a white nightgown. Inexplicably, we both managed to fall back asleep, and in the morning, we talked through what we had seen. This hadn't been a dream or one of Adam's episodes. We both watched the figure that we thought was each other. We slept with the bedside light on for the rest of the week, and were expressly forbidden from telling Grandma, who each morning would complain of sensing a presence in her room. When the hidden guest book was returned to its rightful place, I flicked through for